Hi, and welcome to Web Slinging. Today we're going to be looking at the basics of Photoshop. So, let's just get right in. We open up Photoshop, and it probably will take a little while to load, so don't worry, that's normal. There's a lot of stuff going on in this program. It's a very heavy program, but it has a lot of amazing tools that you can use to make your Facebook profile look better, your Tinder profile, whatever it is. Um, it's amazing. So we open it up and right away we see a kind of dark brown or dark gray background. Depending on which version you're using, there are many different versions of Photoshop floating around. The newest one is the Creative Cloud. I'm on CS6. And a lot of them function in more or less the same way, just with different tools, maybe a few more tools, but yeah, the basic principles are all the same. So, how do we get a file into our Photoshop program? There are many different ways to do it. So one way you can do it is go File, New, and once it loads, we see here a title window. And this can be also a little bit intimidating, a little bit scary at first, but don't worry. The name here is the name of the file, so you can name it right away. Let's say picture. Preset, they have defined presets here. Default Photoshop size is 7 by 5 inches, I guess. Okay. You could do US paper, 8.5 by 11 with 300 resolution. I'll get into that further later. International paper, millimeters, I guess in the international scope they use millimeters. Photo, and here for web, you can change the size here, 800 by 600, all these different kind of preset sizes. And this is basically just going to determine the size of the canvas that you're going to be using for this particular file. So that can always be changed later. It's not a big deal if you click on the wrong size right away, but if you know that the end result of the image that you want to make is going to be 800 by 600, you can do it right here, and it'll automatically set it all up for you. So let's just say, for example, we're not going to go into mobile devices. I mean, if you're designing for a phone, if you're making a mobile app, that could be useful to you. And film and video is something that I have never used personally, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And of course, you can do a custom size. So here you can type in the width of the pixels and the height. And here is the resolution. And this is going to probably either be 72 if you're using it for web, and 300 if you're using it for print. And you don't need to like break your head over it. It's just remember 72 for web. It's usually already set up for Photoshop, sorry, by Photoshop for you. Here, 72. And if you're using paper, 300. So if you can't remember that, don't worry. It's in the presets. And here, color mode, RGB color is going to set up the Photoshop file to know what kind of color mode you're going to be using. So if you're using it for web, a lot of the time it's RGB. You can see here it is in the default. And if you're using for print, usually if you're using it for print, you want it to be CMYK, and that's because CMYK is related to the print colors that you use. So not every one of the RGB colors exists for print, but all of the CMYK colors are set up to look like that color for printing. So, you know, what you see on your screen should be what you see on the final result in your hand. It's not always the case. It depends on the printer. You know, it also depends on how your screen is calibrated. If your screen, because every computer screen has kind of a different setup to it. So it's like when you have a friend who has a computer and the way that the colors display on their screen is totally different than the one on your screen. It's just the way that it works with computing. So again, like, don't worry too much about it. It's not that big of a deal if it's web 72 and if it's print 300. And here we can choose the background content. So you can make the background color a specific color. You can make it transparent. And this is good if you're working with PNG files, if you want the background of the file to be transparent at the end. And that's more, well, that would be always probably to be used for web, unless you're making like an acetate image because you're a teacher and you still use those old projector things. I don't know. But for the most part, you're going to be probably working with a white background. And again, that can always be changed in the Photoshop file itself. So all of these things are very customizable. So we're not going to worry about advanced right now. And let's just say that this is set up the way that we want it to. So I'm just going to hit OK. And as you can see, it's loaded a white background with the dimensions that I asked for. I forget what I said I wanted them to be, but I think it was like 1,000 or something like that. So this is one way, and now we can work on, you know, putting images into the Photoshop file. And this is good for if you want it to, your end result to be printed on a page. You can have an easy idea of what the result is going to look like on the page. With web, dimensions are all over the place, so it really depends on what you're making. Another way, this is the way that I really like to use Photoshop is, say I have an image already and I know, oh, this is a big one, okay. I know what image I want to use. You can really easily go in here and click copy image on the image, whatever it is. You can use it from your local files as well. It doesn't have to be from web, but it totally works with web. And then we go File, New. And basically, Photoshop is super smart. It already knows the width and height of the picture that I copied. So let's say, I'm going to call it face, and hit OK. And all I have to do is press Control V or do Edit and Paste, and it will paste the image directly into the file that we created here. So that's another way of bringing an image into Photoshop. Another way that you can do it, though I wouldn't recommend it, is that you can actually drag and drop. You grab onto the image that you like and you can drag it into the icon here at the bottom and it'll automatically make a page for you, but sometimes it might put the page over an image that you already have. It's a little bit more tricky to use, and the image is probably not going to be set up in the way that the original image that you selected is set up, with the dimensions, with the resolution, with whatever. So I would really recommend that you bring your files in. Either you can start a blank one here like we did, or copy and paste it in like we did here.